The emergence of intelligence is a multidimensional problem. Uh, Unlike others who have worked on this similar problem a couple of 100 years ago, especially in the time of Descartes or those classical philosophers, there the idea of intelligence was much more anthropomorphic. In other words, the consensus was an intelligent organism should have consciousness. But then, with our studies of neuroscience and general exploration of the biology of the planet, we've seen that intelligence actually manifests in different ways. For instance, not all animals or organisms need consciousness to do intelligent or perform intelligent behavior. We've seen, for the example of slime moles, that these slime moles, even without having a proper neural system embedded in their bodies, they're able to do complex things like puzzle solving, just because their biology uh, allows them to do so. So to have a thesis that says that intelligence is strictly restricted to organisms with neurons or complex organisms is perhaps not correct. We've seen microorganisms behave in a way that's very, very intelligent, in a way. We've seen them evolving in situations that is impossible to even think about. We've seen uh, organisms evolve at the go. Now, we have, as computer scientists, have used evolution as a way of evolving intelligent internal agents inside computers. So while backpropagation is one technique to train neural networks, we've seen that evolution too is a very, very well used and well researched technique, except the fact that while for backpropagation, the reward signaling and the eventual, updates in weights are faster in comparison to, say, organisms or processes like evolution. Evolution still is a viable process to develop intelligence. So that means not just system complexity, it boils down to what sort of algorithms are being used to develop intelligent systems. And so we might propose a thesis where intelligence itself is, it works like a program. It's something that can be replicated by a machine, and thus that makes the possibility of having really intelligent machines a reality. Now this is a philosophical bend of mind that probably did not exist some years ago, or some, or maybe it did, but it's not very well researched. But the fact that now with very, very efficient computer hardware, we're able to kind of simulate the things, or we're able to have models that do perform intelligent behavior in a very anthropomorphic way, we can say that, well, yes, basic intelligence does not really require much complexity, but for that system to have be intelligent, that particular program has to be there. Philosophizing even more, we might say that life is a manifestation of intelligence, but then that would be a kind of metaphysics mumbo jumbo that nobody understands. But I guess, uh, from there, when we look at the current state of the art language models, it's very much tenable that we might use these language models to kind of build working models of the human brain and human cognition. We have to keep in mind that human brain and human cognition are a product of like eons of years of evolution, and language models for that matter, or deep neural networks, they take what, 6 months to train at the max, like, probably with, you know uh, the thing is, the way that these networks have evolved, both these networks, the humans and the machines, they have been very different, but still they are converging to a point where they show similar behaviors in terms of performance on particular tasks. So the question arises, can we use these models, I mean the artificial models, to study the human models? And if yes, then can we somehow extend that thesis to say that, well, the internal mechanisms of them are kind of mimicking each other? Now, at that point, I think the problem is we cannot really be sure about that, because the architecture is different, the implementation is different. I think the main point is, at the end of the day, they are very two very different, mechanisms for, they're two very different intelligent mechanisms: human intelligence and machine intelligence. And while human inspired techniques, for instance, the latest work of OpenAI with their 4o model, with their O model, I keep forgetting the name of the model, but it apparently uses something for reasoning, wherein it thinks. Now, to my native intuition, I think the thinking that they are talking about is just a very glorified chain of thought reasoning, wherein they kind of prompt the model to, like, sort of build reasoning chains in the output itself, and that output is kind of iteratively improved upon by the model internally. And when it's practically it's confident that, well, this is what I should be giving, that's when it gives the answers. Now, one of the major problems with the autoregressive models is, and was, and will be that, using the setup that we use for these models, you cannot really go back, you cannot really do backtracking, so reasoning becomes difficult. So it's like a linear arrow of time thing. And I think there was a paper very recently where they showed that, well, large language models are pretty good at predicting the next tokens, but then they're not really very good at remember, understanding, comprehending, remembering what happened in the past. That's how they're trained. Now, I think this entire reasoning thing, where you just give a huge block of memory to a language model to edit its thoughts, it's pretty novel, in the sense that it kind of mimics how we might be thinking. If you probably bring in things like, different cognitive models, those models might fit into this. But at the end of the day, I think these are like human intelligence and machine intelligence are two very different mechanisms. Now, it would be very interesting to see that the mechanisms for both of them have similarities. Like, if you look at the neural activations themselves, if we see any sort of convergence in the activation behavior, it would be pretty interesting. But I think at the end of the day, native if you're not really explicitly training these models, we would probably not find those patterns. If we did, it would be really amazing, but in the long run, with how these models are developing, I am pretty skeptical uh, about this, and I don't think that we would see such convergence coming anytime soon.